Good evening everyone, it's Cllr Ray here and welcome to this week's Ask Paul Live. As has been pretty standard, we'll leave it for about a minute to a minute and a half just to let people get the notification that the video has started and to start coming through onto the live feed. And I'll take the opportunity to get my live feed working on my laptop so I can pick up the questions while I am talking. For those of you that have already started to join, I hope you've had a good and my technology was just rebelling there. I hope you've had a good and productive week as possible. It's obviously glorious weather and I appreciate the great sacrifice a number of people are making, particularly if you're in the city centre parts of the ward, not being able to get out when you're in flats. So as I said, we're going to leave about another minute just to let people start joining, and then we'll go through a couple of local updates that I've got, a couple of things happening in the ward, and then I'll start going through some of the questions I've already been sent in advance, and then I'll start going through some of the live feed questions as well. So we'll just give it another minute. Hello Sarah, nice to see you join us as ever. Let's just get this going. See some more people are joining now, which is fantastic, so just give it another 30 seconds or so and then we'll get going. Right, get into my live video. There we go. So what I'll do is give it another few seconds. There we go. So we'll start with some local updates, just to kind of let you know what's going on locally. So our hub at the Involve Centre, which is acting as the main food hub, is still operating. They are seeing a much larger increase in requests for food parcels now, specifically based on the fact that we've just sent out thousands upon thousands of letters advising people of how to get in touch. They are getting quite a good supply of donations from the Fair Share Centre, which has been set up by the council, and from other agencies. If there is anyone that is able to donate any food or supplies, then also please do let me know and I'll forward it on to Claire, who's managing the Involve Centre. We've also got a number of other partnerships being set up at the moment. I've received quite a lot of emails and contacts about people wanting to donate or help create personal protective equipment for NHS staff, care home staff and key workers. There is now a dedicated email for this, so that if you do want to make a donation to support towards this, you can get in contact. So I will put this into the feed slightly later on, but for anyone who does want to offer personal protective equipment they've made, or if you're a business and you're wanting to help supply that locally, if you email PPE offers, that's all one word, PPE offers at leeds.gov.uk. We have a central team now that's collating those. So for, again, anyone who is wanting to donate personal protective equipment they've created at home with 3D printers, or if they're stitching gowns, etc., get in contact with that email and they will gladly look at how you can help support. We've had quite a lot of information released in the last couple of days about traffic regulation orders. So these are basically where we put parking restrictions into the ward. I've contacted local groups about the parking restrictions for Goodman Street and Fox Lane with some initial feedback which I'll pass on. Again, if you're interested in that and you live in the area, it's on my Facebook, but I'm going to do a compilation link at the end of this for specific topics. There's been a traffic regulation order potentially proposed for Sussex Avenue and Sussex Green. Again, I've already posted that to local people, but again around some traffic regulations there to stop antisocial parking. We've also had one for Lady Pit Lane near St Francis Primary School. Not got that out onto Facebook yet, but I'll do that later. And we've also got some provisional planned for a crossing point at Pepper Road, Middleton Road in Hunslet, which again I will be posting online shortly. Just some other kind of headline figures just to let you know where we are as a city, and then we'll get into the Q&A. As of the 20th of April, so this is about 4 days out of date, Leeds had reported, and this is just at hospitals, so this is just at hospitals, 1,010 reported COVID cases, and just at Leeds teaching hospitals, so these figures don't include care homes or any other deaths, we have sadly had 143 people pass away in Leeds. Now they are just based on the 20th of April, so the 4 days out of date, and they are based on Leeds Teaching Hospital Trust only. They're not including any at-home related COVID cases or any in care homes. So I'm going to move on to some of the questions that have been sent to me in advance and the questions you're now posting. So I'm just going to go through the ones that have been posted now, and then we'll go on to the other ones. So Sarah, do you know when Temple Green's open? So the Temple Green testing facility is already taking tests as far as I am aware. They are going out as invite only. Now if you're referring to Temple Newsham, the actual public park, I'm not too sure on that because it's not in my ward. If you're referring to Temple Newsham, the testing site for COVID, that is already open, but that is to invite only at the moment. Though there is an announcement that we'll be going to any stage where people, key workers and NHS workers, can register for their tests. I think that was announced by the government yesterday. Let's have a look. Hello Simon, hi Paul. Just down on Hunslet Moor, there have been horses put there near the flats and near the spinning wheel. So in terms of the horses, there was 7 horses at one point, and they were alternating between Northcote playing field and Hunslet Moor. The owner was contacted, and some of those horses have been moved on. There are still some horses on Hunslet Moor that we are aware of. One of them has recently just had a foal. The owner has been contacted. Now the owner has been going to provide water, etc., but the owner has been contacted and asked to move them onto a more suitable site. I do believe the foal got loose today, as it were, and several, I think it was police officers, had to bring it back to where it needed to be, and it also caused quite a lot of distress. Public land isn't allowed to be used for this for one simple reason: there's a clean-up cost, but we are in contact with the owner to try and get that resolved. The owner has already been told they need to move the horses on. Another question. So in terms of council tax, again this was a regular one that comes up in these. If you are finding it difficult to pay your council tax, please get in contact with the Central Contact Centre. There are long waits at the moment, unfortunately. What we will look at first of all is, if you are in financial difficulty, can we get you signed up to council tax benefit to cover the gap? If we can't do that because you're not eligible for whatever reason, then we will then start looking at payment referrals, or if necessary, payment holidays. So speak to the contact centre. For someone that's on a means tested benefit, you would generally, unless there's someone else in your household with a higher income, be eligible for council tax support. If actually with the council tax support you're still struggling to cover the payment, that's where the deferments and the holidays potentially come in. Let's have a look. In terms of Thwaite Mill car park, Sarah, it's been closed because the facility is closed. We only have one member of staff that's actually permanently at Thwaite Mill, which is actually the caretaker. So as soon as we're in a position to reopen facilities, we will do. Obviously from a council perspective, it's a museum, it generates us income. We're around £130 million down since the start of the virus. So we can certainly look at that. It is closed off literally, I think, just to try and dissuade people going to the mill more than anything else. But from a recreational point of view, it would obviously be great for people to be there so they could use the towpath, etc. But again, we're trying to dissuade unnecessary travel where possible. Yeah, Michael, it's for, you're absolutely right. It's for key workers who've only got symptoms. As I've said, at the moment there's been invites going out. I think the government's indicated they want to move to a system where people can basically refer themselves. So, but you're absolutely right. Can you clarify sitting on park benches? Yesterday the police were moving people off park benches in Holbeck Park. So there has been some guidance come out from the National College of National Council of Police Constables. I always forget what the acronym means, which is giving them some guidance. So for example, they should be allowing people to sit on benches where there's more than 2 people, there's not an ability for social distancing, or where it looks like it may congregate more people. Then the police do have the jurisdiction to ask people to move on and go through the encourage, request, enforce kind of process. So a lot of it depends on the situation. What the police have been told is actually, particularly for people that may be less mobile or maybe have a health need, actually sitting on a bench is reasonable, but it shouldn't be for a prolonged period. It should be to catch your breath and move on. And where there's groups of more people, they will ask people to move on, just to try and dissuade them from being there. We've recently just purchased a large number of benches to put into the ward for the very reason of making the ward a little bit more accessible, and we're not putting them out at the moment for that very reason. What I'll do, Michael, I think that's a really good piece of information actually. What I'll do is I'll put on the link to that onto my Facebook page after that, so people are aware of that. I think we were going to get promised a link for that via our council update today, which we've not had our councillor update today, hence why there's not been as much posting on my Facebook, but I'll go on the website and pick that up. I think that's a really useful tip, thank you. Okay, so that's it for the questions that have been sent to me so far on the live feed. A couple of ones that have been sent during the week. So I had one in relation to the roadworks at Low Road. So I put onto my Facebook a couple of days ago that we're going to be removing, or should I say Connecting Leeds, which is the kind of organisation that's doing a lot of the roadworks in the city at the moment, is going to be removing the bund at Low Road Primary School. Now, what a bund is basically it's a small earth mound, and they're generally used as a defensive or a landscaping mechanism. So, as some people may be aware or may not be aware, from the park and ride facility that's going to be built at Sturton all the way to town, there's going to be new road layout, there's going to be cycle segregation, bus prioritisation, and then the normal kind of road network. As part of that, we're going to be extending some of the roads and changing some of the routing slightly. So at Low Road Primary School, there's a bund there. It was originally put there as a defensive mechanism in case a car went careering into the school. From what I've been told, but I've not had the full details, there is going to be some more defensive mechanisms there in case of a car crash. But effectively, that's going to be where the cycle lane element of the new, well, the footpath and then the cycle lane element of the new road layout is going to be. The idea being that from Sturton Park and Ride, there's not just a bus prioritisation, but there's also a cycle lane all the way into town to try and dissuade people from their cars. That work's happening from next week onwards. There's already staff in the site of the school, but the school's been completely informed of that. I got another question about Hunslet St Mary's Spire. So, as some of you in the community will be aware, Hunslet St Mary's Spire and the land is owned by the Church of England. And the specific question was around what is the process and is the council looking to buy this land? So, we as a council have identified the site as a potential site for development of some flats for 55+-year-olds. We are interested in purchasing the land. We've been in advanced negotiations with the Church of England and the local diocese over that. The way this process now works is we have a preliminary kind of idea of what we want. There are land surveys going on with the contractor we've employed to potentially build the development for us. And what we're trying to do is understand whether the land is suitable to build on. If the land does prove to be suitable and we can confirm that we can do it, what we will then do is confirm to the Church of England that we are interested in taking on the land. The Church of England then has to do a public consultation effectively, which says, are you happy for us to sell the land for this purpose to Leeds City Council? If they say yes, what will then happen is a preliminary design is made for the site, That will then go through the council's planning process, and then it will get, hopefully, planning permission, and then that planning permission will then turn into working development that we build. So the council is very serious. It's something we've pushed as local councillors to buy the site. We want to protect St Mary's Spire for generations to come, but it needs to be financially viable for the council. What we have also committed to do is, if the council does purchase the land, because I know a lot of people have asked about this, is as councillors we will fund the automation of the clocks in the spire, so that they're back up and running as a working timepiece for the people of Hunslet and the surrounding area. So we are onto it. It's been delayed because of the virus, but as soon as those land surveys are done, and if they say it's okay for us to build on it, we'll then progress to the next stage. Had a question about litter bins as well. This one was about are they being emptied? Yes and no. So what we're saying to people about public litter bins is our staff there's about 30-40% sickness level still at the moment. They're prioritising hazardous cleanup, so things like dog fouling, for example, hazardous, dangerous fly tipping and things like that. What they are doing is, when they've got staff capacity, they're then doing the litter bins. So this is why you're seeing a bit of a disjointed, sometimes they're overflowing, sometimes they're being cleared. It's because as they get staff numbers, they're going out to clear it up. So what we're asking people to do is try not to use the litter bin if possible. If you're out doing your daily exercise or you're walking the dog, whatever, take your waste home if you can. If you can't, then we will get to the litter bin eventually, but instead of them being cleared maybe a couple of times a week, they're getting cleared maybe once every week to 2 weeks. Similarly to that, if you are seeing fly tipping, please still keep reporting this. Again, it might take us longer to pick it up, but we are still picking fly tipping up. It's just taking much longer. Let's see if there are any more questions. No one's very talkative tonight, which may be a good or a bad thing. Let's have a look. Just checking my questions now, 2 seconds. Let's have a look. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Same question as last week. The footpath on Hunslet Moor is not complete. It will be completed once our staff are back to full numbers. Reason why it's completed is there's a top layer to go onto it, which just makes it weather resistant. So there is some damage being done to it by the fact that it's not being completed, but it's easily repaired. Let's have a look. Any other questions coming through? A question about my little pet. So for those who haven't seen, this is Peggy. She's working really hard right now by having a nap. This is her first kind of spring and warm weather, and she's not quite used to it. So for the person that asked, she's a Basset Hound. She's about 6.5 months old, and yeah, she's working really hard now by having a nap. And yes, the other person that asked, that is a tree. This house has a lot of plants in it, and we're in my bedroom today because my other half's having a meeting downstairs. But yes, that is also a tree. Let's have a look. Anyway, just update this. Yeah, so the council has released, and so has NHS England, some advice videos in multiple languages. Someone's asked, are we doing anything in multiple languages? So, as people should have seen by now, or will have seen, you've probably got a leaflet for your door about the emergency Leeds City Council advice line. Now that is all in English. However, we are sending out advice in other languages where requested. So we have PDF versions. So if there's a specific person, a friend or a family member that you believe is vulnerable, that doesn't speak English as first language, and you've got the facility to print it off, great. or we can send you the email version. You can forward the email on to them. NHS England has also done multiple videos in 12 of the most common languages. There's been a translation by a doctor's service in 36 languages. A lot of these are on my Facebook. Since people are asking, I will post them in the comments below. I've got another comment here. Alright, yeah, Michael, I'll make sure that's seen in the comments. Thank you for that. Right, okay, a planning question. So someone's just asked about the car wash on Dewsbury Road, which recently built an additional building onto the car washing part of it. They have put in what's called a retrospective planning application. This is basically where someone does something when they should have put planning application in beforehand, and then they've been kind of caught out, told off, and then they put in a request for planning permission afterwards. I have not objected to the principle of what they've built. I've objected to the quality of what they have built. So if anyone goes onto the planning portal for that, there is an objection from me now. But it's not over the principle, because what they've built is actually quite sensible. It's to secure cars while they're being valeted. But I have objected to how it's been built, because it's not been built very well from my perspective, and there's a flood risk. Another one I've recently objected to, which I know a lot of local people have been unhappy about, is the plans at Victoria Riverside. There is a shop unit there that the developers say they now want to turn into 7 flats. I have objected on that as well, because there really does need to be a shop at that part of Hunslet and Riverside, and it would be good for everyone. So I have objected to that, because I know I've had a few comments about that. Let's have a look. Anything else coming in? Really, you're all very quiet today. In terms of the playgrounds and the parks, I don't know when they're going to be reopened. The honest answer is we're looking at what the government is saying. Now, I think we're probably going to be in this lockdown, certainly obviously until the end of the current period, potentially longer, and I think there'll be very much a phased return to normality. I don't think, and I think the Chief Medical Officer made this clear a couple of days ago in the government's briefing, we're probably not going to be anywhere near some form of normality until towards the end of this year. When public parks, the smaller play parks, which I know are really important to people on Beeston Hill and in Hunslet, are reopened, I generally don't know. What it does mean though is that when we can get them open, we should do, because access to green space is really good for public health. Council tax rents. So very similar to the point I made earlier about council tax itself. Those who are Leeds City tenants, what I would say is, if you are having difficulty with your rent now, please do get in contact with your housing officer or the central contact centre. If you are eligible for housing benefit, we will basically help you get along with that application. If the housing benefit won't cover the gap in your rent, then what we will do is look at the deferrals and payments again. Yeah, Paula, what I'll do is I'll put that into the Facebook links at the end of this. There is a post a bit down on my Facebook page from about a week ago about the shop and my objection and other objections, but there is something called public access. So I will put those down there. I think that's a valid point to help people do that. So in terms of schools, Michael, so there is the high school that South Leeds needs, which is going to be Middleton. There's a free school plan, but the government's been dragging its heels on that. Councillor Pryor, who's the executive member for education, is in constant dialogue with the government over that. In terms of primary schools, we do have a new primary school planned for Hunslet as part of the situ development. It will be a 2-form entry primary, so that's 70 school children. That is due on, I don't think it's phase 2 or phase 3 of situ, so it's in about 2-3 years time. Sorry, so it's a bit of glare, so let's just move that slightly. So we are getting a new primary school. The high school South Leeds Esprelines, which was planned to be in the Middleton Park ward, there is a lot of pressure going on to that. I think credit to Coburn and the relevant council officers that got the emergency provision put in place for September at such short notice, but we need a full high school, and so there's a lot of conversation with the government about that. Yes, our government said parks should be open. What we've done though is we've shut playgrounds, so public parks are still open, but anything that is a playground we've shut where possible. The only reason being playgrounds get people to come together. It's very hard to social distance around a climbing frame or some slides, etc. So public parks are open, playgrounds aren't. That's my bad terminology there, so thank you for picking me up on that. Let's have a look at anything else coming through. Brown bins, this one's come via for an email. Again, we don't know when brown bin collection will start again. The council's made the very clear priority that as much as it's good to take the brown waste, there are ways people can deal with that at home, composting, etc. There's loads of advice from Zero Waste Leeds around that. Our priority is obviously removing black bin waste, which can become hazardous if it goes off, smells, etc., and recycling. And we have a lot of staff from Cleaner Neighbourhoods, which are the people that clean the streets, who are literally helping the bin crews, who are still going out there to get the bin collections done. From our point of view, we obviously want to get the brown bin collections going as soon as possible. It's recycling, it stops it being dumped elsewhere, etc. But the clear priority, as I'm sure you can imagine, has to be making sure that that black bin waste and that recyclable waste is removed. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. I've had someone send me another comment. Outside. Right, in terms of, someone sent me a direct message about takeaways. So in terms of takeaways, they are still allowed to operate, but they shouldn't be having people sitting there. If anyone believes a licensed premises is not abiding by the stay-at-home procedures and social distancing procedures, and by licensed I mean we're talking takeaways, pubs, clubs, please get in contact and I'll forward that on to our licensing team. But yeah, takeaways should only be doing takeaways at the moment, and if they are allowing people to sit inside, then that is a breach of the social distancing guidelines that the council's enforcing. And also, yeah, the same person talked about dogs. So dog walking is completely fine during this, though it needs to obviously be done responsibly. But the guidelines are very clear that the dog should be on lead. This is just to stop the occurrence of a dog literally running for someone, because they've probably not seen another human being other than the owner for a while, and getting a little overexcited, and then you have to go and get the dog and then try and get it. It doesn't help social distancing. Let's have a look. Some more stuff coming through. So Karen, the voucher system should be in place already. The government says they've set this up. I'll pick that up. So because my understanding was it had gone live. So let me double check on that and get back to you, Karen, about what's happening with that. I think there is a specific difference between free school meals and certain other things, but I'll come back to you on that, Karen, if that's okay. I don't know why specific takeaways aren't open, Sarah. As I said, it's completely fine under the lockdown and stay-at-home procedures for takeaways to operate. They're just not meant to be doing sit-in services. So I suppose that will be down to individual takeaway owners as to what they're doing with their businesses. Question on, okay, this is a business one. So this is for anyone who's a small business owner, business rates. So there's a lot of information at leeds.gov.uk/coronavirus/business around business rates. Anyone who was automatically eligible for support should have been paid now. Those who are applying, we're now going through the process of sending those funds out. So yes, we will be looking at that. There is a lot of support now. We do know there are some businesses that have fallen through the gaps, and this is where a business operates within a bigger building. They pay a rent to that building, and that rent covers all of their costs. This has been picked up by parliamentarians, including our local MP Hilary Benn, who's picking this up with the Chancellor, because for a lot of smaller businesses, hair salons, boutiques, and those that kind of work in that environment, it has hit them hard because they can't get the 10 grand cash amount, and they can't get other support. So that is being picked up by parliamentarians at the moment. Let's have a look. I've just had a WhatsApp about VE Day celebration. So yes, this is quite sad actually in one respect. As many of you know, the celebrations for victory in Europe for the 75th anniversary are coming up. The council had a huge range of plans to celebrate VE Day, which have sadly been put onto hiatus now. Again, further down my Facebook, and I'll put a link to it in the comments at the end of this, there is a VE Day pack, so people can still celebrate Victory in Europe Day in their own way at home. The council is planning to do some social media stuff around this as well. It's just one of those really unfortunate situations where we'd really want to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the end of the war in Europe in a way that does it justice to our veterans, but protecting people's health has to come first. Let's have a look. Anything else? Couple of ones here which are really specific personal casework, so I'll pick those up separately. Let's have a look. That's a really political question someone sent me, so I'm not going to answer that on the live feed. Cheeky for asking me though. Let's have a look. No, there are. Someone's asked, are there any elections on the? Was it? I forgot what time it was this year. On the 7th of May. No, there are no elections this year, so you've all been saved from an election in one sense. The elections have been carried over to next year. Next year was going to be what's called a fallow year, where we don't have elections. They've just changed it around, made this year legally the fallow year, and next year will be the local election year, and it will be my colleague councillor Iqbal who will be up for re-election. So there's that. Construction work. Again, this one comes up quite a bit around construction work. So at the moment, the government is still saying construction work can go ahead. There's a big campaign about that at the moment, and some of the big house builders are starting to kick back in that had stopped. From a council's perspective, most of the work that's being done on behalf of Leeds City Council is vital maintenance. There are some big projects like the Regent Street Bridge and other bits because there is a massive knock-on delay, but because of social distancing, and we are enforcing it quite heavily on our building sites, it has slowed the progression of those works down quite a bit. But we do know there's a lot of people really worried about construction work and people that work in that trade. Care homes. Someone's asked, do we know how many cases of coronavirus have been picked in care homes? I don't have the figure in front of me, but offhand, but I think from memory, in terms of the number of care homes, we think around 30 care homes, or we've been advised 30 care homes have either had an outbreak or a suspected outbreak of the virus. So quite a large number of the care home population in Leeds it is being heavily monitored. Most of the care home sector is private, but the council's public health team are keeping in contact with that. It's obviously incredibly concerning. Yeah, in terms of the Army Gyratory and the Regent Street Bridge works, there is a lot of information about that on the Connecting Leeds website. I'll probably best if I put the link. They are designing in such a way as it will have a traffic impact. There's no point in pretending it won't. Army Gyratory, obviously a major connection point to the city centre for that part of the city. It has a knock-on effect to this ward. Regent Street Bridge does as well. There is a plan in place, but there will be disruption. But that bridge needs fixing because it ain't going to last if it done. And then the repair jobs are designed to make it last for another 125 years. And Army Gyratory does need to completely be redone because, again, there's a drop of rain in Leeds and Army Gyratory shuts down and the entire city goes to a standstill. So yes, there's going to be disruption. There is a traffic management plan in place. I don't have it straight to hand, but it is on the Connected Leeds website. I'll put a link to it in the, or parts of it are anyway, but I'll put a link to it into the report. Just in terms of the Regent Street Bridge, that only got formal approval by the Executive Board today, or was it yesterday? So the formal planning permission for that, where all of the traffic management plan will now go forward to city plans for formal approval. So the way it works is they put the plan forward, the Executive Board, which is the executive of the council, the most senior councillors, agree in principle that it's a good idea, which happened yesterday, and then it goes to plans panel, in this case city plans panel, because it's a major development, and then they scrutinise it, make sure the design's how it should be, that all the proper mitigation measures such as traffic management are in place. So the Army Gyratory stuff is there as far as I'm aware. The Regent Street Bridge isn't because it hasn't gone through planning yet, but that will come forward. I don't know about convents actually, Sarah. I know we've got a number of small convents in the city, and I don't know what the figures. I know we've got a small convent here in the ward actually, but I don't actually know what the figures are in there. I never thought to ask actually. It might be something I feed back to our officers to kind of catch up with the faith sector about how they're managing. Let's have a look. I had another question about Ramadan. So first of all, wishing everybody who is celebrating Ramadan a peaceful and thoughtful month ahead. Always a testing time for the Muslim community when you have to fast, but obviously a very important spiritual time as well. The question was around faith facilities. So again, I'm really impressed with all the faith institutions in this ward, be they Christian, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim. We've got lots of small house churches and the like in the ward. Everyone's been really good at keeping to the rules and not opening. The council has put advice on how to, with the faith leaders from the Muslim community, about how to approach Ramadan in a safe way. For those who aren't as familiar with the Muslim faith as others, one of the big parts of Ramadan is something called an iftar at the end of the day. That's where, you know, the family come and have a meal and they break their fast, and there are some really big iftars that happen. Obviously that's going to be a very problematic time for a lot of the Muslim community, just as for a lot of people who were celebrating Easter, not coming together was an incredibly stressful time. But I think it's a credit to all the faith communities in this ward that they have really kept to the rules in what is a really challenging time when you're a spiritual person. Taxi drivers. So I posted something about this on Facebook a couple of days ago around taxi private hire. So private hire and taxi drivers are not considered key workers, but they are considered to be providing a key service. And the distinction of that is, though in themselves they're not deemed as key workers, because they're helping people maybe get to hospital appointments, or to go out and get food if they're not very mobile, and providing travel service for some of our vulnerable kids who are still having to go into school. They are still allowed to operate. What we have advised private hire companies, the Hackney Carriage Trade and drivers, is about how to do that. So they should really not be taken any more than one person where possible. They can take two if it's from the same family household. The reason why we're saying one is because what we're advising is for people to sit diagonal to the driver. So the driver's in their seat and then for the other person to sit in the furthest seat away. And I think in that way we can spread the distance out. But yeah, they're not key workers, but they are deemed to be providing a key service, so that's why they're continuing to operate. Let's have a look. Fireworks. Yeah, we've put out some guidance of this as a council actually. Sorry, this one's come via WhatsApp around fireworks. We are asking people not to fire fireworks on Cllr Carers Thursday, as I think we now call it. As great as it would be, there's two things. One, it distresses animals, and distressed animals can cause problems. And actually, secondly, this has come from some of the NHS charities actually. There have been some people, nurses, doctors, porters, other key workers, who have come home and their animals have been really distressed. And if you've just spent 12 hours in hospital or you've been one of the other vital key workers, it's probably not the best idea. So we are asking people not to do fire lanterns or fireworks on Cllr Carers Thursday, just to try and mitigate the fire risks with fireworks and fire lanterns, and in terms of the fireworks, not to distress any animals. Let's have a look. This one's coming via email. Yes, so this question's about the 1 day allowed exercise apart from if you have a health condition. So the government, I've put this into my Facebook further down, the government has refined its advice on how many times you can go out of the house a day for exercise, and what they have said is if someone has a health condition, so for example someone has a mental health condition and going out helps them to walk, or if they say for example have a form of autism where actually the regularity, the routine, the disturbance to the routine prevents them from having their normal routine, then that is fine as long as it's basically in their care plan and they can substantiate that, and the police should be taking that on board. Some organisations have taken to providing people with letters for that, so that's where the discrepancy in the advice has come out. If what the government says is if you have a health reason why you need to be having more than 1 day's worth of exercise, then that is reasonable as long as it's a documented reason, and the police should be looking at that appropriately. I live next to the canal path, and so can give you. So you're talking to Cllr Paul, so that's fine. I'll let you have that conversation. Let's have a look. A few other things. Yes, someone said a question about Leeds housing at the moment. In terms, no, we're not doing any non-emergency Leeds housing applications at the moment. Simple reason being we don't have the staff to cope with it while we're redeploying staff to help other services. So you've probably seen from the bidding website there's nothing on there. We're only doing direct bidding where there is a risk to a person or a property is deemed not to be safe, and they will need to contact Leeds Housing Options directly. Let's have a look. I don't quite get that question, so I'm going to reread that one and come back to that one. What are councillors doing while they're sat at home? So some of my colleagues are going out and helping with the volunteer effort. Some like me are stuck at home a bit more because I've got someone at home who potentially has a health risk, so I don't want to put them at risk. So, but a lot of us are still working. We're doing casework basically. I've been very, very busy because everyone's been sat at home, been sending in me emails and social media messages about all the stuff that's been annoying them for absolutely ages and they've had no time to complain about. Because a lot more people are sat at home, they're taking the opportunity to get in contact and complain. So I've actually been quite busy, and I think a lot of councils are in a similar position. A lot of us are at home, but we're still operating. We're doing lots of casework. There's a lot of antisocial behaviour complaints and noise complaints at the moment. We've had a lot of requests from small businesses about advice about where to get help with small businesses. There's been quite a lot really disturbing of people wanting direction about where to get advice on domestic violence, and we've obviously been referring people appropriately to the right services. So we have been keeping busy, just not as visible as normal. Let's have a look. Anything else coming through? Questions are drying up now. Just refresh this. Let's have a look. Did you see the question regarding steps and the canal path? No, I did not. Let me go get that one. Okay. What I will do with that one, that's a really interesting one about that. If you can tell me the specific locations you're concerned about, I will pick that up with the relevant landowner. If that landowner is Canals and Riverside Trust, we'll have a look around what we can do around accessibility of that. If it's a Leeds Council facility, I'll refer it to our accessibility officer and see if we can get their opinion on it under our public service equality duty. So yeah, if you can send me a direct message with that, I'll have a look at the specific landowner and see if there's anything we can do about that. Let's have a look at anything else. Am I sat in my bedroom? Yes, I am sat in my bedroom. And the picture for this is, again, someone's asked this on WhatsApp. That picture is the old ridings of Yorkshire. So we've got the North Riding, the East Riding and the West Riding as they were historically were before they were changed many, many years ago. Let's have a look. Nothing else there. Let's have a look. Okay, so I think I mentioned this slightly earlier on. The cost to the council so far we've estimated as of 3 days ago, is £130 million so far. We've got about £22 million of that back, so we're trying to get that information, or money back from the government as soon as possible. But it costs a lot to get to where we are at the moment. Do I ever liaise with local churches, Sarah? I am more than happy to liaise with anyone. So I am quite happy for any institution or organisation in the ward to get in contact. If they want me to turn up to coffee mornings, once we get back to normal, do virtual meetings with their parishioners, ask me questions, bring it on, it's my job. So any organisation, get them to get in contact and I'm more than happy to liaise with anyone. Let's have a look. Anything else? Right, so that appears to be it for this question. Not as busy this week as last week, but you know, maybe everything's going great. Oh, one final question about right, yeah. So this is a question specifically about parking issues in the ward. It was raised on my Facebook a couple of days ago, but someone else has raised it about parking in the Rochford estate. So the Rochford estate down in Hunslet. I have asked for additional parking bays here. They were originally going to charge 10 grand a parking bay. I got it down to 5 grand, and then they went no under the climate emergency. So it is something I'm still looking at, particularly with some of the safety features we are looking to put in. I will be re-raising that because it will have a knock-on effect to parking to the Rochfords. So I will be coming back to that. Let's have a look. Is this a question? Oh, thank you, Paul. I'm literally just trying to do my job, and I want to be as available as possible. It's what I'm elected to do, and I suppose in one direction is what I'm paid to do. But I'm here to do what I can whenever I can do. So contact me whenever. Let's have a look. Okay. No, that's fine. That's personal casework for someone, so I'll pick that up separately. Yes, I do have a weekly chat with Hilary Benn, the local MP. Someone's asked, am I still in contact with Hilary Benn and can I raise issues to Hilary? Yes, it's a kind of an informal coffee morning between interested parties, but I do have a chat to Hilary, and Hilary gives an update at 2 o'clock every Saturday, and we have a bit of a chinwag about what's going on. And so yes, we do, and there actually have been several issues that local people have raised on this that have gone to Hilary to be raised up to the relevant departments in Westminster, and I will be having another such chat with him tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Let's have a look. Do I have any more plants in the room? Yes, I do. We'll just show you. Bit of sunlight there, but yeah, there's more plants there. There's loads of plants in this house. It's my other half's hobby, and we've even got a little vegetable patch in the garden at the moment. Let's have a look. No, I think that's pretty much it for questions. By the looks of it, I've got nothing on Twitter direct message. I've got nothing on WhatsApp. I've got nothing via email. Got nothing in my Facebook direct messages, and I've got no other comments. So I'll probably just sum up now, then we'll probably finish a little early. So I think I don't know how you can kill a cactus, Sarah. So then again, I'll leave it that one or that one. Anyway, so I'll probably sum up now. So I think the big thing I would say is, and I think we don't say this enough, is thank you to everyone that has literally done the right thing and stayed at home in this incredibly difficult time. We've obviously got at least a couple more weeks of this current phase. I think realistically we probably have more at the end of that. I think we all need to be realistic that we are not getting back to any form of normality before the end of this year. And that will probably be some sort of phased return to normality. And as a council, we are now talking about how we get to normal, whatever normal was, at the end of this process. But I think, we spend a lot of time saying naughty people not following the rules. The vast majority of people have, and I think you should all pat yourselves on the back for doing so. I think in terms of what I want to do is I want to obviously continue these conversations, and I will be doing so for the next foreseeable future. One thing I will be looking to do, if I can do, is to actually have some sort of actual live dialogue. So I am looking at the moment at how I would do basically what we would do at a residents meeting, where actually all of us can talk to each other as a kind of virtual kind of coffee, afternoon, evening, whatever. I'm not 100% sure how to get that done yet, but I'm going to try my best. One thing I would like, again, if you can feedback to me is... Oh, I just have another question. Are we going to be made to wear masks, and who will provide them if mandatory? So this is a really live question in Westminster at the moment. The feeling is, and I was speaking to Hilary Benn about this last week, is there is a feeling this probably will become something the government recommends. I think the reason why they haven't at the moment is they can't get enough PPE for key workers, etc. But I do think this is going to become a really live thing. All the evidence that's coming from other countries at the moment is, and this is a bit of a weird one, it doesn't stop you getting it, but it radically reduces the rate of you transmitting it. So if you do have the virus and say you have a really mild version of it and you don't know, it stops the transmission, or sort of say reduces it very, very heavily, the risk of it. So I think Westminster will get there. but I don't think they will get there until they're on top of PPE, for the simple fact they're not on top of it. It's a conversation we're having with the government constantly as a council, as are the other West Yorkshire councils, as are every council going at the moment. But I think it will be a recommendation rather than mandatory before long. So yeah, on that one. So just to finish up, we are still operating as a council. I think it's really important to stress that we are still going. What we call the community committees will be starting up again soon. This is where the councillors sit down and make spending decisions for the local area. These will be open to the public to come and watch, and we're just figuring out how we get that done. Our planning process is starting again. Our highways process is starting again. So the council is slowly becoming open for business, as it were, in terms of its normal practices. But it won't be as it was for a while. What I would really like from you as the people I'm elected to represent is just your feedback. If there's something, a concern or a worry, just get in contact. If there's a way you think I can correspond with you and dialogue with you, let me know. Feedback is a gift, as one of my former work colleagues once used to say to me every 5 minutes, because they gave me that much feedback. So please do. I am interested also, and I'll be doing a specific video about this weekend, about the rewilding of the ward, and just to kind of give you a tidbit of what I mean by that. One of these things this has shown is actually the importance of green space, which we always knew, but how important it is in urban areas. And I'm really keen to find out from you as residents, pardon me, about what parts of the ward you think would be really good to be left wild. So we've done a lot less mowing, we've done a lot less gardening, and actually what parts can we encourage to have wildlife take back over? So there'll be some specific asks from me to you as residents in the next week or so over that. But again, I also want to say, just to think about the future. We will be doing projects after this as normal, so if you do have an idea or a project or something you think will improve people's lives, please still let me know. I can do that work while I'm sat at home and figure out if it's doable or not. And on that, I will leave it there. I will wish you all an absolutely wonderful, healthy and safe weekend. I will be back at 6:30 next week. I hope more people join us and ask even more questions. It's been a bit of a quiet week this week. You've let me off lightly. And as ever, I'm available all week on email, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, my website, Facebook, WhatsApp. Please do get in contact. And as I would always say, as I do in public meetings, if there's something that's bugging you, I'd rather you tell me sooner rather than later, because I've got a better chance of fixing it if I know about it sooner rather than 6 months later. And on that, have a great weekend. Good to speak to you all. Bye.